You're listening to Keith Engle, the host of TGI Sports Talk on the National Streaming Sports Roku channel. National Streaming Sports is brought to you in part by BetUs.com, designed for true fans. NFL odds, Week 1 and futures, college football odds, including Heisman Trophy favorites and playoff odds, NBA odds of division winners and playoffs, Major League Baseball playoff and World Series odds, the National Hockey League Conference playoffs and Stanley Cup odds, and boxing wagers. Betting opportunities include versus the spreads and outright winners, also during the game. Use our link on our website, nessp.info, the Bet Us Opportunities webpage, for a 125% bonus on your first 3 deposits. Must be 21 years old, and remember, bet responsibly.
Oh, good afternoon, everybody. Keith Engle here for TGI Sports Talk. MLB update. Great to have you with us. You see, we got a new sponsor, BetUs.com. Go to Northeast Streaming Sports webpage, though, and access that site if you're going to do so, because there are some benefits to those of us who participate on national streaming sports through this BetUs app. I use a competitor, and I'm going to be checking it out. Well, not yet. Maybe this weekend if I make a college football wager, but we'll see. Futures, all kinds of things. I'm a big future bettor. So we look for some college football futures on BetUs.com. Go to Northeast Streaming Sports webpage to access it through there, though, if you're willing to do so. And as the ad says, gamble responsibly. Welcome, everybody watching us today on Facebook, YouTube, on our TGI Sports Talk feeds. We're also live on National Streaming Sports on Roku. Get those apps downloaded, guys. Watch us on the big screen. Watch us anywhere. You can't comment there, unfortunately, but you can watch us on the big screen. Quick shout out to some of our groups, the Bottom Line Sports with Flo and the gang. Great stuff over there, great content. They do a great show. They're on Let's Talk Sports, where there's lots of great content as well. We're not going live there anymore, but we are on there after the fact. We do share to their Facebook page. The Sports Authorities with John Gonzalez, of course. Great stuff. John does some great stuff. Greg Rawlings has got a great site over there at America's Pastime, the Love for Baseball. And Ken Krause at Golf Buds and Sports of All Sorts. So there's some of the groups that we work with. And Ralph Williams, of course, at RW Media, specifically the Sports Corner from 4 to 6 p.m. Eastern out of Pittsburgh. And you can catch him on Facebook and YouTube and such. And Ralph will be back. I know they haven't had shows in a little bit, but they will have shows starting in September again. Thanks to my guest this morning on One-on-One with Keith Engle, the great Sidney Moncrief, current NBA Hall of Famer, great player, All-American at Arkansas under grade 80 Sutton. They actually made it to a Final Four in 1978. And he was a superstar, number 5 pick in the draft. There was some discussion. The Lakers were going to take him over Magic Johnson at number 1, by the way. And one of the great defensive players of all time. So as I said earlier, if I said on lots of shows, you can't judge people by just numbers. If you look at Sidney Moncrief's numbers, we'll get to some baseball here in a second, I promise you. If you look at Sidney Moncrief's numbers, you go, man, nice player. Sidney Moncrief is one of the greats of his era, I can tell you right now. No tougher player, no better defender. And that's why you can't just look at numbers, guys. Watch the game. Eye test. I keep telling you, eye test. Anyway, let's move on to some baseball. See who's with us yet so far. Good afternoon, Danny Fuller. Is it still morning for you? Well, no, it's afternoon. Danny's been with us since about 5 a.m. this morning. Thank you, Danny, for the dedication. And JB from the Back It Up Binge podcast on YouTube. Check out JB's stuff. JB posts a lot of great content over there. I'm big on nostalgia stuff on YouTube, and I found some stuff on JB's page from time to time that I love. There's Drew. Drew's with us. Yankees are back on top again. We'll certainly jump into that. We're going to look at some of the some weird, I guess, potential records that could fall. Yankees and Judge and Soto could get into some rare air if they can get to the 100 home run mark between the two of them, and they certainly have a shot at doing that. We'll talk about that. They are now a game and a half ahead of the Red Sox, the Orioles. Part of that is because of them. Tigers are 7-3, still 9.5 out though. White Sox, by the way, on a pace for 123 losses now, 3-7. The Astros is that the Astros? I think 7-3 in their last 10. The Braves trying to make it a race. We got races, guys. We got races in the AL East. We got races in the AL Central. We got a race in the AL West and a managerial change, which we'll talk about in a second. The Brewers really the only ones running away. The Dodgers got a little bit of breathing room over the Diamondbacks and the Padres, 4 games and 4.5 games now. Who else has been hot or not? Really, I mean, everybody's been kind of playing up and down. Big news this week: Seattle fires Scott Servais. What happened? How did we freeze? What was that all about? I've never seen that happen. I took a screenshot. I somehow guys, I have no idea. I must have a new mouse or something. I took a screenshot of myself and froze. Anyway, Scott Servais gets fired. Dan Wilson will be the new manager. Been in the baseball for a long time. Played with Seattle. Been in that organization for quite a while on a lot of different roles. He knows the organization. He knows the players. They're looking for a shot in the arm. They had a 10-game lead at one point here, wasn't it? Actually, I don't know if that's accurate. I saw when I say 10-game lead, I heard Brett Boone say this on a Facebook short he did yesterday, supporting Dan Wilson, who I believe he played with in Seattle. He said they had a 10-game lead. I don't remember them having a 10-game lead, but regardless, they're 5.5 games behind the Astros right now. Not good news. Scott Servais fired. Second manager fired? Is that it? We've had just 2 managers fired this year, which is a little bit different. Good afternoon, Rick Sherlock. Rick, I got to bring something up which is not really germane to the show, but I'm friends with a reporter, a sports reporter named Gary McPhillips. He's been around a long time, and he posted something the other day about he used to broadcast on WIZR, if you remember, in Johnstown, and also WTRY in Troy. But he just told me that he used to do local games in semi-pro football, and I don't know if he did colonial games or not. I've asked him. I've told Gary after we had this connection, because sometimes my one-on-one show, I'm just going to be self-indulgent, and I'm going to bring Gary on maybe as soon as the 6th of September, and we'll talk about that. And I just asked him. I haven't got a reply yet when he mentioned he did local sports and did semi-pro football. I asked about the Colonials because I don't know who else he could be asking about. And I asked about, your brother Bob, and I mentioned that I was friends and acquainted with, many former Love City Colonials, including yourself, and threw some other names out there. So we may have an interesting show coming up on the one-on-one shows. Should be interesting. But so I digress into something that isn't. The Scott Servais bites a big one. It's funny. I remember, gosh, was it last year? Was it last year or 2 years ago? I had Scott Servais getting fired then. They got to a horrendous start, and then we're one of the hottest teams in baseball. I feel like it was 2 years ago now, not even last year. Last year, they fell short of the playoffs. 2 years. I think it was 2 years ago because they made the playoffs. I'm pretty sure the year I'm referring to. Scott Servais has been around a long time, including playing with the Mariners as well as Dan Wilson. So we'll see. These moves don't work that often, right? they've worked a few times. Bob Lemon, I can think of in 1978. We've talked about this before with the Yankees. Jack McKeon taking over the 2003 Marlins is another example. And I'm thinking of teams that won. Most teams, and I remember looking this up at one point when we had a lot of managerial, or maybe I was talking about firing Brett Boone, or I'm sorry, Aaron Boone at the time. But most of these don't work out. Most teams don't even make the playoffs. Some make the playoffs and then they go out. I'm trying to think of other instances off the top of my head. And I can't really do it. Maybe you guys got some. I can't think of any. I'm sure there's some that have made the playoffs at least. But winning the World Series, I can think of those two instances, and that's it. Mariners threw in the towel. I think the exact opposite, Rick. I think they're looking for a kick in the pants. Dan Wilson knows. I don't think by any stretch of the imagination have they thrown in the towel, because remember, they're only 5.5 out, which again, 37-ish games left. I'm sorry, not even that, right? 120, got to do my math now. 129, 34 games, 33 games left, depending on the team. Well, let's look at them. The Mariners, they're 7.5 back in the wild card, actually. They're closer to the division than they are the wild card. But I don't think this is them throwing in a towel. They made some moves at the trade deadline, kind of to go for it. Randy Arozarena comes to mind. Turner. The hell's Turner's first name? Good grief. It'll come to me, or one of you'll give it to me. Yeah, I think this is, I'm looking for a jolt. I don't think it's throwing in a towel, but it really doesn't matter, because it doesn't really work. Again, I know 78, 2003, those teams made changes and won World Series, Yankees and the Marlins. Other examples of you got Rob Thompson is another example. They got to a World Series, right? But they didn't win. So somebody may have already put that up. I don't know. I haven't scrolled down far enough. I did not steal that from anybody, but Rob Thompson just popped into my head because I'd like to be managing the Yankees right now. Come on. You're a game and a half out, man. I mean, man, it's a 5.5 game lead to really fall out of the wild card race, JB. You sound like me. Elton, again, that does, Lynn, excuse me, doesn't help. The bats are cold. They can come around. It's funny. I scrolled a couple of Baltimore Royals sites, groups that I belong to and I monitor. As I do all the teams, I kind of look to see what the what the overall thought process is. Right now, you can't believe. I'm shocked, JB, at the number of people calling for Hyde to get fired. Really? Won 100 games last year. You're still 15 over. Sorry, 19 over. It's not like the sky's not necessarily falling here. Hard to overcome this many injuries. But I wouldn't throw in a towel if I'm a Boreal fan. All the Brewers just keep that division below them. They just keep kind of treading water, right? The Cardinals. Who's in the wild card right now? In the American League right now, you have the Orioles, the Twins, and the Royals. Red Sox 3.5 back. That's probably it. Again, how many games I say we have left? Let's look at Tampa Bay, for instance. There's 7 games back. They played 127. By my math, they got 25 games left. Right? 35 games left. 35 games left. That's a lot when you got to pass multiple teams. So I think it's a 4-team race for wild cards in the American League. National League, a little bit different. You got the Diamondbacks, the Padres, the Braves. Mets a game and a half back. The Giants 4 back. The one shot I got it by sleepers. Giants. Only a game over 500. Cardinals 5 back. Cubs 5.5. Once you get to 5.5. How about the Pirates? By the way, I mean they're like Heckle and Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde here. The way they have been up and down, including the Reds. None of these teams deserve to make the playoffs. There's too many teams, right? Here, if we've got teams in the American League, you got, I'll give the Red Sox 3 games over. After that, you got teams that are 1 game over 500. In the National League, you got the Giants just 1 game over 500. You got the Cardinals 1 game under. They're fighting for a playoff spot. There's too many teams. There's just too many teams in the playoffs. AC's with us. Father has a future bet for Baltimore to win the World Series. Forget the odds are. Listen, they were my pick, and I'm sticking with them for now. Even as a Yankee fan, Yankees this isn't like the Yankees at home here. Heel goes on the disabled list this week. Cole pitched very well the other day, but he didn't have great command. Nestor's up and down. Clark Schmidt might be back, in the next 2-3 weeks. Maybe gives him a shot in the arm. But again, he hasn't pitched in months. I mean, who's the favorite in the net? I'm telling you, the A's may be the A's. Good grief, the Astros may be the favorite in the American League now after being buried in April and early May. I'm sticking with my Oriole pick, though. And I don't know what the future bet would have been on them. Not as long as that Notre Dame future bet I gave you, AC, that I know you jumped on, and as did I today before that number goes down. But I still like them. A lot of injuries. You can overcome injuries, right? Everybody's gonna have lulls. Yankees came out of theirs faster than the Orioles did. But I mean, it's still, they're going to make the playoffs. You want to avoid, again, we've had discussions the last couple of weeks here and on other shows. The teams want to win divisions. Why wouldn't you? I don't want to be in that wild card where I risk playing 3 games on the road. Makes no sense. Sherlock, good pitching don't always beat good hitting, especially when the pathetic Mariners hitting. Isn't that backwards? Oh, I see what you're saying. Seattle's got a really good staff, but they're hitting about, 199. Drew's good at finding those numbers for me. I don't keep all those stats in front of me. Just too much to look at, but oh God. It's unfortunate. They have one of the better pitching staffs, starting staffs, at least in my mind, in the league. Can't hit their way out of a paper bag. They thought of Rosarina, and he was picking up some steam a little bit before the trade, and then work stuff. Sorry, guys. Let me turn this a little bit. But now he's kind of faded again. Very unfortunate. It's a good team. Scott Servais, I think, did all he could do. I wouldn't blame him. I mean, he didn't put this team together. J-Rod is, I'm pretty sure, if I'm not mistaken, and Drew correct me or anybody correct me, he's got, I think, 11 home runs and 39 RBIs. This is one of the budding young stars in baseball. Pretty sad what's happening up there. Great point. But I don't think they've given up. I think the Dan Wilson thing is they're trying to kick something into gear here. Chris F. Grave with us from Toronto. How are you? What could be an all-time fist for the World Series this year? Kansas City versus all-time fist. What are we first? Is that a first? I got a little nervous there for a second, Chris. Kansas City versus the Milwaukee Brewers. Imagine that. I would say the networks would not be terribly happy with that. But it's possible. Royals hanging in there, just 2 games behind the Guardians for the Central crown and in the playoffs if they were to start today. Is that right? I did say that before, didn't I? Yes, they have the last playoff spot right now in a 3.5 game lead. Interesting. Best winning streak is a mere 4 games by the Dodgers. The Dodgers have recovered a bit. Diamondbacks stay pretty hot though, 7-3 in their last 10. They've fallen 4.5 back, but they are in the playoffs, as are the Padres as of today. Worst losing streaks are only 3 games, Mariners and Marlins. Well, the Mariners 2-8 over the last 10. I'd like to see what they are over the last 30. It's got to be pretty bad. I can't. Am I wrong? Did they have a 10-game lead at one point, and I'm missing out on this? Brett Boone said this in a post yesterday. Last night I saw it. Brett Boone, who won't come on my show because I talk about his brother Aaron, I think. I don't know. Brett, if you're listening, I promise to be nicer to Aaron if you come on the show. I'd like to get your son on the show. Probably going to be a 4th generation of Boone's plan. I'd like to get your dad, Bob, on the one-on-one show. I'll be nicer to Aaron if you guys will just come on. Just kidding. Oh, my God. By the way, why are the Marlins, and I said this last week, but why are the Marlins even in the league? Somebody else brought the White Sox up, but at least the White Sox try to do stuff, right? It hasn't worked out well the last few years, but at least they try, and they'll keep trying to win. It may not be in Chicago the way things look if they don't get a new stadium. They might be in Nashville or Charlotte. But the Marlins, they trade away all their good players all the time. You blame Derek Jeter for walking out of that situation? I don't. Down to 3 players with OPS over 1,000, Judge, Soto, and Witt. Witt's been tremendous. Witt, by the way, I'm going to throw some of these numbers at you real quick. There's some interesting records that are potentially can be broken this year. Bobby Witt has one of them. There's 140 and 220 club. That's runs and hits. More than 140 hits and more than 140 runs and 220 hits. You know who's done it? Ever? Charlie Gehringer, Lou Gehrig, in 1930, by the way, and Charlie Gehringer did it in 1936. They're the only 2 American League players to do it in the last 100 years. In the past 100 years. The only other AL hitter to top 140 and 220 before that, Ty Cobb and Nat LaJoy. That's some pretty good company, no? He's also cruising towards 30 and 30, which isn't as big a deal as it used to be. But you know how many players have hit that 140 and 220 club and 30 for 30? 0. Bobby Witt, one of the great young players in baseball. We need to hear more about him. Is it because he's in Kansas City? Get the national media on this guy because he is a great player, man. Oh, my God. By the way, we're in the 4th week of August. You know how many games he's missed? Load management. Remember load management? He's missed none. Not one. You know how many other batting champions have won the batting title and never sat out a game? Now he's got a ways to go, 35 games-ish. Stan Musial twice and Lou Gehrig. Lou Gehrig didn't miss any games, of course. Bobby Witt's in some pretty rare air. And these are real numbers, by the way. These aren't, I'm not, The Athletic had an article with all kinds of these records that are being chased, right? I'm not getting into some of the nonsensical ones or the things I think are nonsensical. I'm sorry, it is my show. I get to pick and choose. Just saying. What's this other one he's got going for? To lead us leading extra base hits and singles. Witt is 5 back of Judge for the AL extra base lead. By the way, Judge is still in the Triple Crown race. Quite a ways behind. I would see about 14 or 16 behind in batting average. Can happen. You know, Bobby Witt hits in a 2 for 30, and suddenly we got a race. And he's 9 behind Altuve for singles. So he's behind Judge. He's behind Altuve. Last man to lead the league in both singles and extra base hits in the same year. The aforementioned, by the way, 80 years ago, Stan Musial. So maybe the game of baseball isn't as bad as I make it out to be sometimes. These are exciting. These are exciting numbers for me to see chased. There's some others too we'll get into if you want. Let me get some comments in here. WIZR broadcasts all our games. I don't remember the name of the announcer. Very well. He did it from, I believe, 72 to 80. Gary McPhillips. He also he worked for IZR. I think IZR was a Met station back in the day. Rick WENTN or WENT. WENT, I think it is, right? WENT. Did the Yankee games. I listened to those stations when I was a kid under my pillow. We're going to have some fun with Gary. Interesting, all those players, OPS above, on base percentage, sorry, I'm above 400. Well, again, why would you pitch to him? Why is anybody pitching to Judge? My God. Justin Turner, thank you. My God. I had Josh Turner. Is there a Josh Turner I should be thinking about right now? Thank you, Danny. There's always somebody to bail me out. Of course, he spent some pretty good years in L.A. Danny ought to know that name. His best years. Imagine if he was a Met having those years. Or as a far from done, agree 100%. JB's like, wait a minute. Now that I think about it, JB, didn't you get on me? Didn't you get on me for ragging my team? It just popped in my head. Or as a far from done, every team has its ups and downs. Those fans have been spoiled. Wow, spoiled? I don't know about that, Drew. This happens with a lot of teams that rely on young players. They tend to be streaky. Oh, every team's streaky. Every team. Look at the Yankees. We're not relying on a lot of young guys there, other than Volpe. Well, a few guys. Padres. A lot of veterans there. Well, rookies too. Whatever. I mean, yes. But I wouldn't say they're spoiled. My God, they haven't won a World Series since... when? 1983. Is that right? 1983. I wouldn't call that spoiled. But you're right. They're certainly not done. Baseball's a game of streak. That's why, listen, I know, and Kenny hasn't been on a while. I know he had some internet issues, and I hope he's doing good. We haven't seen him in the show. I know he's paying attention because, and I'll post the before we get done today, I'll post the links for the football pick'ems on TGI Sports Talk. We're doing a pro and a college. I know some of you are already in them. Hope to see all of you in at least one of them before we start the season. And the college will not start this weekend, by the way. It's the real week one. So please do that. I'll post it here in a bit once the comments slow down a bit. Flaherty's been a good pickup for the Bums, pitching ace like. If you remember, that's a good one, sure. I remember how I was like, I was beside myself with the articles that I saw that, you know, ace pitcher Jack Flaherty had been traded to the Dodgers. Well, he is pitching like an ace for the Dodgers right now. Lots of injuries there. Kevin Pillar changed his tune a bit on retirement. Speaking of which, let me finish your comment here. Kevin Pillar changed his tune a bit on retirement. I only bring him up as I'm shocked that no playoff team plucked him off the Angels. I don't know. Kevin, I don't know if I was ever a big Kevin player, but he plays hard. The guy always played hard. And again, I say you can't let numbers dictate what you think about a guy. And he did hustle. Who he reminded me a bit of, I think, Chris, is, and I like him, is Harrison Bader. But he certainly could have been a decent defensive replacement, or that fourth, fifth outfielder, even off the bench for one of these contenders. But I do think his best days are behind him. And we also got word that Joey Votto, his dream of coming back and being able to play with the Blue Jays, he's a Canada native. Where's he from, Chris? He's not a Toronto native, is he? Maybe he is. But his dream has now expired, and he is officially retired, as he announced the other day. Great career for Joey Votto, by the way. Tremendous. Since I bring this up, I'm going to get back to your comments in a second. I get sidetracked all the time, but I want to. Is Joey Votto going to be a Hall of Famer? What do we think? We have these conversations a lot. Canadian first baseman. I guess I'll find out where he's from too. Joey Votto is that's where you Toronto. Went to high school in Toronto anyway. So Joey Votto plays 16 years. He was a second in the Rookie of the Year, won an MVP. He was second in another MVP voting. He was in the top 21. Wait a minute. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 times. He was 8 times in the top 20. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 times in the top 10, and he won one. All-Star, 6 times? Don't think he ever did. He play in the playoffs? Yeah, he did play in the playoffs 4 times. Anyway, his numbers, which again, numbers aren't everything, I understand. 356 home runs, 1,144 RBIs, base hits. Where's his hits? 2135, 294. I think he falls just short. The problem is he has such good years here. 40. 37, 113, 29, 103. Injury shortened season, 14, 56, 337 batting average. Lifetime on base percentage over 400, by the way. Boy, I'm telling you, I'm tempted to put Joey Votto in the Hall of Fame. But Tony Perez, another great Cincinnati Red first baseman and third baseman before that. If Tony Perez is in the Hall of Fame, Joey Votto's got to be in the Hall of Fame. Look at those MVP votes. I mean, again, I look at the lifetime stats, and that's what we tend to do. And we tend to get all wrapped up in them. 500 home runs, 3,000 hits, right? 300 wins. Joey, man, you watch the guy play the game. Plus, he's a great defensive player. I'm saying Joey Votto's a Hall of Famer right now. I could change my tune. First glance, Hall of Famer. Mariners batting .216, worst in baseball, beating the White Sox by 3 points. It's bad. It's amazing they're 500. It's amazing they're 500. J-Rod, 11 homers and 39 RBIs. 38 RBIs. Hello, Scott Kobe. How are you, buddy? They had an 11-game lead, and in 30 days, it was down to 2 games over the Astros. Well, now it's 5.5 back. It's funny. They must have never been up 10 when I was doing this update. They must have got up there on Saturday, Sunday, Mondays, falling back on Fridays. I don't remember that. So Brett Boone, I apologize for that too. So I apologize for being so hard on your brother. So I'd like to get you or your dad or your son on the show. Not going to happen. J-Rod's number is 11 and 38. I'm off by 1. That's pretty bad, man. For a kid as good as that, 122. No, yeah, that's just par for the course today. 122 strikeouts and 420 bats. There's no way this kid should be hitting 260. No way. AC laughing. AC likes to have fun. I don't know what he's laughing at this time, but happy to laugh with you. Hey, Scotty, how are you? I know it's the wrong show, Scott, but you can give me a pick on the Georgia Tech Florida State game tomorrow. I'm tempted to take the points. Florida State wins, but I'm tempted to take. It's come down, though. If it goes back to 10.5 or better, I think I'm taking the points. Do I foresee the Mets getting, well, I think the Mets and Rays could both get in. Let me get back to the standings here for a second. The Braves have found a little bit of life, but now Riley's out, 3 to 6 weeks? They've had a rash of injuries, man. So, I don't think they're both get in. I think the Padres and the Diamondbacks are both getting in. I think you got a race. I think it's a 3-team race. The Mets, the Giants, and the Braves. And if I had to make a pick today, might be the Mets. But I'm going to stick with my earlier pick in the preseason and take the Giants. How would that be? If the Giants were to sneak in this wild card, which is well within the realm of possibility, you'd have 4 out of 5 teams in that Western Division in the playoffs. I don't think that's ever happened. Now, again, we haven't had these expanded playoffs all that long. And maybe we shouldn't have it any longer. But I don't think that's ever happened. I'll ask again. I'm changing. He's on a pace right now for 60 today as we talk, Scott. And I think I said, I don't remember what I said. I think I probably said he might fall short because he wouldn't get pitched to. But they keep pitching to him. I don't know why, as you were saying here. I would never pitch to him. I don't care how hot Austin Wells is behind him. And Austin Wells has done very well in the last 6 weeks, 2 months. I pitched Austin Wells all day. So right now, I think Judge gets here. He's at 48. Another one of these stats I'll give you here right now that's being chased. The all-time 100 home run club, 2 teammates with 100 home runs. Mantle and Maris, of course, are top at 115 in 1961. Bonds, who had 73, with a giant head this big. Just a little editorial comment. 110. Ruth and Garrick at 107 in 27. McGuire, see above, and Langford, 101. And then the 2002 A-Rod and Palmeiro, see above, 100. And right now, I believe Judge is at 48, Soto's at 36, right? So that's 84 by my Perth education. 16 home runs between the two of them should not be out of the realm of possibility. That's a pretty select group of people you're talking about joining, and they got a chance to pass to steroid-laden, at least 2 of the steroid-laden twosomes here. Don't know about Ray Langford, but I know McGuire, A-Rod, and Palmeiro might possibly been doing something. They could very well pass them and move into fourth. Pretty elite company when you're going to be just behind Ruth and Garrick, Maris and Mantle. Use an asterisk if you want for Bonds. I don't really care. But yeah, a lot of fun. National lead MLB in steals 175, but with 60 caught stealing. That's not really a great ratio, by the way. Reds have 173, which is a much better ratio. 36 caught stealing out of 200, I think, is much better, right? That's a 74% success rate. That's pretty good. But I'm sorry. There's Kenny. Good to see you, Kenny. Haven't seen you in a bit. But I have to put the asterisk on this too. I'm sorry. Steals are fun. I want steals in baseball. I'm just not happy about how we artificially inflated this number by making the bases bigger and turn the baseline shorter, and the ridiculous rules about pitchers can only throw to first base twice. So again, yes, nice to see running in baseball. Stop putting rules in to freaking get the results that you want. The wannabe fans are spoiled, not this old standbys. There you go. Kenny's a big Oriole fan. I keep forgetting that. So, I mean, again, why? I'm not sure. And again, without the context, Drew, without any real context to why you may have said spoiled. I mean, I'm not sure how they could necessarily be spoiled because, again, they haven't won anything in 40 years. I don't mean that as a shot to the Oriole fans. They just haven't. Mariners lead the majors in strikeouts with 1,308. It's amazing how these numbers... I will say this again. I say it a lot when we're talking about strikeouts, right? One of the coolest stats in baseball. And that's why baseball is great, by the way. Numbers matter. That's why you got to stop messing with the rules to artificially change the game, right? Please don't change how many innings you have to pitch to get a win. My God. Anyway, speaking of strikeouts, and I believe if I have the numbers accurate in my head, Joe DiMaggio hit 369 home runs and struck out 366 times. Look it up. If I'm wrong, it's not by much. More home runs than strikeouts. Who's doing that today? Nobody. Guaranteed. I shouldn't say guaranteed. You might find somebody with one home run and no strikeouts, I suppose. Mariners don't need a new manager. They need a whole cadre of hitting coaches. How about hitters? Yeah, well, yes, coaches. Coaches who will actually, Drew, I promised myself I wouldn't go on a tirade today. I'm not gonna. But yes, hitting coaches who teach guys how to hit. That don't worry about launch angles and exit velocities and all this other nonsense. I'm going to have Jeff Fry on soon, former Major League Baseball player, a lot of it with the Rangers. You guys, if you're not friends with Jeff Fry on Facebook, go look him up and see some of the stuff he posts. He posts some great stuff about the way the game is played, the way players act. He shows some of the ridiculous batting instruction these young kids are getting. It's beyond. It's beyond ludicrous. Beyond ludicrous speed. Ludicrous speed. Somebody give me the reference. If you don't know it, I may have to consider taking their card away to watch the show. Ludicrous speed. Yeah, I mean, Jeff Fry will. You guys, at least baseball purists, will love Jeff Fry. The man is speaking to me directly, I swear. So anyway, yes, Drew, a whole cadre full of hitting coaches that actually teach guys how to hit. You see over here, when they leave you a gap over here and they pitch you outside, how about going with that pitch and hitting it where nobody is? I don't know. It's a novel idea. 145 years in the making. John Gonzalez from the Sports Authority. It's good to have John with us as always. As I mentioned at the top of the show, John has one of the best groups on Facebook. He's one of the best admins. And so are all the guys that I mentioned. All my groups are great, but John is exceptional. I would say him and Greg Rawlings and Flo, who I mentioned, Ken Krause, who I mentioned, all great. But John's my favorite, I think. John does come in and participate with us. I'm sure that sways me a little bit. And John and I, we think a lot alike. We have a few differences of opinions, but if you haven't joined the Sports Authorities, do so. I know Drew did, and Drew participates a lot and posts some great stuff. I don't always agree with it, but Drew is this. Drew has well thought out statements that I don't always agree with. No, Drew's very good, and we all have our opinions, man. What makes the world go round? Chris is saying the Baseball United season starts April 23rd. It's a 33-game season. What is it? I don't even know what it is. Baseball United. What is? Where is it? Is it in the U.S.? What time is it? Oh man, we're getting late already. Good show today. Baseball United League. Now I have tasked Chris with stumping me, and he does a great job. Wow, this is guys. This is teams. Cobras, Wolves, Monarchs, Falcons. Where do they play these games? Interesting. Robinson Cano's in this league. Nearly half of the players here competed at the major league level. Together, they represent more than 25 countries around the globe. It's not the easiest website to navigate to get information, but we'll have to check it out. They got a broadcast partner, Chris? Interesting. Kenny's here. Kenny is here. Kenny's watching. Kenny's here. Hello again, Kenny. Pilar was bit by a water moccasin and then died in a swamp. Got to be two different Pilars. I miss you, Kenny. Don't count out the Braves. Still chasing the Phils. You know, the Phils have, they've let the Braves in, John, for sure. I just don't think the Braves have enough. They don't have enough pitching. Their hitting has not been where it is. Austin Riley's out for 4 to 6 weeks. Again, I'm just not sure. I mean, again, they got a good pedigree, and they know how to win, and they got a lot of veterans who know how to win. It's going to be a fun race. I think that last wild card spot in the National League will be a fun race with the Braves. You think they'll maybe catch the Phillies? Apparently, if they do, I would think the Phillies would have that wild card easily. But I still see a 3-team race between the Mets, the Giants, and the Braves for that last spot. Once a guy from Colorado got in, Votto can get in, but Mattingly needs to get in. I agree 100% there. By the way, there's a lot of guys I can compare Mattingly's stats to, right? And again, part of this is we look too much at what their accumulative stats are, right? And again, I won't take anything away from Carl Yastrzemski or guys who played 20 plus years. And there's something to be said for playing a long time and accumulating big numbers. And I'm okay. Yaz belongs in the Hall of Fame. Don't get me wrong. But Don Mattingly, for a stretch of time, was the best player in baseball. A pretty good stretch of time. 5 years. He was the best player in baseball. And his numbers, he only played. I mean, you take his numbers, they match up with Kirby Puckett's numbers. I mean, I've always used Kirby Puckett, who I loved as a player. I don't have a problem with Kirby being in the Hall of Fame. Career also cut short by injuries. But I don't know. Kirby Puckett's in the Hall of Fame and Don Mattingly isn't. The Colorado guys are always hard to figure. And I really don't even want to compare Votto to anybody. I look at his numbers. I look at, again, what I say, 5 or 6 top 10 MVP finishes, 1-1. He was in the top 20 like 10 times. That's a pretty good player. Managers who blindly manage by the book drive me up a wall. I've noticed a number of players being benched against same-handed pitchers despite completely reverse or negligible splits. Yeah, I mean, there are very few guys. I talk about this a lot. There's very few guys that have a feel for the game. Why are you platooning guys who hit better? And there are guys, by the way, who hit better against the same-handed pitchers than they do the opposite hand. I remember playing ball myself. I had a lot of trouble with lefties. A lot of trouble. You didn't see that many. There's a lot more in Major League Baseball than I would see, obviously. Played against a really good one, by the way, Dave LaPointe. He was a really good pitcher. Or I was a really bad player. Which is both probably true. Dave LaPointe was very good for a short period of time in the major leagues. Pitched a long time, though. Teach your kid to be left-handed. Votto should be a Hall of Famer. If only by I'm base percentage. Again, I wouldn't give one stat, but that's tremendous. A tremendous stat. His batting average is brought down by some bad seasons later in his career. It's some great seasons. Right? It shouldn't all be about cumulative stats. I've even got to rethink my own thinking, right? We rely too much on numbers. And again, I'm biased, so as a Yankee fan, I know I'll get beat up for this. I don't know that Thurman belongs there, but Mattingly does. Thurman's close. Greg Nettles is another guy I think should receive more consideration. I'm not talking about a season or two, Kenny. I'm talking about guys who were dominant for a period of time, 4, 5, 6 or more seasons, but didn't have, a 20-year career because of injuries or dying in a plane crash or whatever it might be. So, I mean, look at if you were the best player in baseball for 6 seasons and you won 4 MVP awards, I guarantee you'd be in the Hall of Fame. If your career ended at that point, you should be. I mean, the time you played, you were one of the dominant players. Better than half of Don Mattingly's career here, he's one of the best players in baseball. Better than half his career, Joey Votto was one of the best players in baseball. I'm not saying 1 year. I mean, there's a lot of 1-year wonders out there who should not be in a Hall of Fame. I'm not saying that. But if we're talking about a guy who finished in the top 20 in the MVP voting almost double-digit times. So, yes, I think there's 2 different people that belong. You can build a career over a long period of time and accumulate outrageous numbers, like Nolan Ryan, like Henry Aaron. Yes. All belong in the Hall of Fame. I'm not saying they don't. But some of these guys, like Mattingly, Puckett's in there. Again, there needs to be some consistency. At their best, by the way, Don Mattingly is better than Kirby Puckett. Better than Joey Votto. Better than Fred McGriff, who's in the Hall of Fame. I mean, that's kind of where I go. I mean, yes, it can't be one season or probably even two. It's got to be 5, 6, 7 seasons. But at his best, Don Mattingly was one of the best first basemen I ever saw play, ever. Guess we're going to go a little long today. Mariners waited too long to fire their manager, most likely. As we talked about before, blowing a 10 or 11 game lead and being 5.5 games back, that's a long time to sit on your hands. And again, firing a manager is no, cure-all. I brought this up before, John, and nobody really has refuted me. That it's only worked a handful of times in the history of baseball. Only 2 teams I can think of won World Series firing a manager in midseason. That was the Yankees in '78 under Bob Lemon and the Marlins in 2003 under Jack McKeon. The Phillies did get to a World Series a few years ago when they fired Joe Girardi and brought in Rob Thompson. I can't think of any other instances where it made a significant impact. I'm sure there's some teams that got into the playoffs after making a change, but not that really made any hay in the playoffs. I'm sure I'm missing somebody. Joey Votto is from I can't say Amsterdam. Edo Bayakoki. Edo Bayakoki. Is that a Native American name? If you're getting on a subway from the stadium to downtown Toronto, it'll be about 30 minutes heading west. Oh, you've spelled it out for me phonetically. Why didn't I look for that? You knew I'd have a problem. Etobi Aketo. It's got to be Native American, no? What is that? I see the Mets getting the 3rd wild card spot. Yeah, when Scott Colby brought it up earlier, he'd asked if I thought that. And I mean, if I'm using my head, I think the Mets. I say the Giants only because I picked them in the preseason and they're still hanging in there 4 games back. By the way, 4, 5, 6 games starts to be a lot when you got teams to pass with 35 games to go. Not undoable, obviously, but. Cool. You're great. Scott's great. That's good. I like Georgia Tech plus the points, as do I. They covered 8 and 9. Great number for Scott. It's a little bit off the beaten path. I was talking about this on the college football huddle. What night is that? Wednesday. And Scott wasn't around, so I wanted to run that by him. So I can tell you, I don't know. I'll post my bet. It's probably the only bet I'm going to make is probably that game. I don't think we're going to start the Scar Box until week 2, though. Miguel Tejada became a member of the Oakland A's Hall of Fame. Miguel Tejada was a really good player. I don't know where he fits in that whole steroid group, but, I don't hold as much against the steroid guys as a lot of people because my assumption is everybody was doing it to some extent in the late 90s through the 2000s or now. So it's hard for me to, I either have to eliminate all of them or none of them. So just, again, it's my opinion. Well, there we go. Well, by those Homer stats, drugs did well. By the ones I just pointed out, yes. But again, how many guys were doing them? I don't know. Probably a bunch. The guys who are well publicized are the guys with the big numbers. Long overdue for Tejada. Always a forgotten shortstop in that period of elite shortstops. Agreed. Miguel Tejada was a really good player for the A's. He was a really good player for the Orioles. Again, the problem is he falls into that era. I'm not taking anything away from Tejada. He was definitely a great shortstop. But this is really, this is Exhibit A, if you want, of why I can't say Bonds and McGuire and these guys don't belong in Hall of Fame. well, I guess we could say McGuire doesn't belong for other reasons, but I'll use Bonds again as an example. I don't know who did and didn't do steroids. Nobody knows. You can sit here and make any statements you want to make. It doesn't matter to me. Other than the guys who were officially tested positive, I'm going to assume a lot more were doing it than weren't. So, and there have been, Tejada's had that cloud as well, and I'm not going to hold it against him. It's part of my affinity for this Kenny Bugger, the politics. He was a great Bugger the politics. He was a great Oakland A. He was a great Oakland A. Probably the last great Oakland A. That may not be true. Mets and Braves could both be wild cards, as the Mets are only 4.5 games behind the Padres. Good point. I mean, I think the Diamondbacks and the Padres will get it. 2 months to go, Drew, but only 34 games. That's not right. So 2 months is a little misleading. 34 games. So it's really a month. I mean, we're almost a month away. It's 5 weeks. There's 34 games. 4.5. And again, it's all going to depend on how many games. If you got one team to pass, then that's not that much. If you got 5 teams to pass, well, that's a lot. Somebody's going to be winning when you are. But all these teams are alive. I would say down to the Giants, all those teams are alive. And again, my problem is that I'm talking about a team 1 game over 500 still in a playoff race. Too many teams are in the playoffs. 361, 371. All right, so I'm off a little bit. The numbers probably change because, we adjust them depending on what site we're looking at. One of the reasons I can't trust other stats. But still remarkable. More walks than strikeouts, more home runs than strikeouts. And gets lost in greatest player ever, Joe DiMaggio. Don't forget his defense. Thank you, Drew. I knew somebody'd pick up on ludicrous speed. If nobody picked up, I was going to end the show. We weren't doing this show ever again. Drew saved y'all. Ludicrous speed through the end of the show now. We're over 2 minutes over. 33 game season sounds fantastic. Well, that's what you got left. No, 162 is perfect number, Kenny. Shorten the playoffs. I don't need the playoffs going to November 10th. 162 games. Baseball was meant to be a marathon. I'd even let you go back to 154. I'd be okay. It wouldn't be the end of the world. I'm never going to be sold on a 100-game season. You get anomalies. We had a 60-game season during COVID, and you saw all kinds of anomalies. Baseball's meant to be a long season, a marathon. Baseball United is the first ever professional baseball league in the Middle East. These are the guys that are backed by the Saudis. Is that right? Now this is coming back to me. I think maybe I'm wrong, Drew. Please tell me I'm wrong. I think I am. Now that I think about it, it was a different something else. The Saudis were going to sponsor something besides Live Golf, and if it's the Saudis, then I'm totally 100% against it, and I'll never talk about it here again. Other than to rip it to shreds. Please tell me the Saudis are not backing this league. Otherwise, maybe I pay attention, but I'm trying to think. It came up on the Mac and Jack show. I feel like it was football, though. I feel like it was football that was they were getting into. They're getting into some other sport besides golf. Big time, backed by the Saudis, and now I can't remember what the hell we were talking about. Well, he was. But he's a few years younger than me, Scott. Scott, Scott, by the way, I mean, you ought to think about why you're here with me in this home. You're like 10 years younger than me, aren't you? Why are you stuck here? Who put you here? Is this a totally age thing, or is there other things going on? I don't know. Why won't they reverse the call on a perfect game by the Detroit pitcher? Why can they? There was no replay at the time. You can't go back like years later and just change the outcome of games. I mean, we could go back and play the 85 World Series over with a bunch of 80-year-old guys. Or not 80. How old would they be? 60 and 60, 65, 70-year-old guys. I don't see. Here's the thing. I don't have a problem. You know who didn't have a problem with that? All that uproar. Jim Joyce, who was and Kenny, you know umpires. Jim Joyce was a well-respected umpire. Well-respected. Death threats, fans all over him. You know who didn't get all over Jim Joyce? Galarraga, the pitcher. Mistakes happen. Human error happens. Players have human error every single day. I'd never be in favor of going back and reversing things later. Jacob, Ethan, how are you? Good to have you with us. We're going a little late today. I let the air out of the bag, Drew. I think the whole season this year is in Dubai. Right? It is a weird website. I pulled it up. It's very hard to navigate. They have events, but no schedule. Is this the Saudis? Because if this is the Saudis, again, I don't have a problem with it being Middle East and Asia. I'm fine. This just can't be backed by the Saudis. If it is, they're playing October 21st. Takes place in Dubai. First of 5 franchise Riyadh team will be announced next year. They're not playing this year, I don't think. Oh, this is next year. This starts next year, by the way, Chris. 2025. I got to know who's backing this before I get excited. So they're going to have Baseball United Season 1 in October of 25. They have a Baseball United Cup in February of 2025. I see Riyadh. I've got to think Saudis. Never will I back anything they do. You want one? I did not say that. I didn't say I wanted one-hit wonders. Kenny? God, I mean, the Joe Charbonneaus of the world, I didn't say I wanted in the Hall of Fame. I said Barry Bonds and Roger Clemens have got to be in the Hall of Fame. I don't care what room we put them in. I really don't care. But I think you're mixing up two different topics. One-hit wonders, I'm not saying belong in the Hall of Fame. Don Mattingly was not a one-hit wonder, nor was he a steroid user. This is what the topic started about. It started about Joey Votto. And Joey Votto's not a one-hit wonder or a drug user. Joey Votto played 16 or 17 years. One of the best players in the league. 10, 11 times in the top 20 MVP voting. That's what we're talking about. Not one-hit wonders. And again, I brought Bonds in the conversation somehow, but again, they belong there. I can't help that. They belong. But I don't care what room we put them in. I've always said, I'm not trying to hide the fact they did drugs. I said Pete Rose belongs there. I don't want to hide the fact he bet on baseball and was suspended for life. Don't want to hide that at all. Warts and all. Joe Jackson, same thing. Warts and all. Mayor's waiting to see how the trade deadline moves played out before pulling the plug. Your strikeout problem has been in place here. So that's true. Well, look at strikeouts problems is in place all throughout baseball. I mean, compare those strikeout numbers with any period, from 1970 and before. 1970s and before. Even 80s, I guess. Judge will be on a beach in a year. Why, Kenny? Why? I see. I'm on Wikipedia. I'll check that out. Actually, if I go back, it probably gave me a. If I go back, I can probably. There it is, right there. I'm staying a little longer than I thought, because now I got to find out. They got a team in Saudi Arabia. That doesn't mean I won't watch. If I find out the Saudis are backing this, there's some pretty big names in there. Acuna, Pujols, a bunch of guys that graduated behind me in high school. Ryan Howard, Chris Sabo. He'll be a manager. I'm going to have to read more about this. Criticism. Primarily, the United States have stated the formation. Well, they're talking about sports washing. When I see sports washing and that term used, I know the Saudis are involved. I'm washing my hands of this thing all together. Blood money, sports washing, Saudis, no. Yep, Nick Botkins. Who else is a totally age thing because we are at least 15 years older than them. At least. Botkins. How old is he? 40? I got 25 years on him. 24 years on him. They already have. What's that? I don't know what that one is, Kenny. The guy who threw a no-hit for 12 innings and lost on a homer in the 13th. They changed it to a no-hitter 30 years later. Ooh. Harvey Haddix? That's a different thing, though. If they decide he got a no-hitter because the game went in extra innings, and again, I don't agree with that, by the way. Maybe I do. I'm not sure if I do or I don't in this case. That's not the same as Galarraga's perfect game. That was the last out, and the guy called him safe. It was a hit. This was changed, if it was changed, and I'm not doubting that it was, because I do have some vague memory of this. And I think it was Harvey Haddix, if I'm not mistaken. It's a totally different situation. They gave a no-hitter because it went past 9 innings. You can't just go back and say that that's an out now. They didn't change the home run to an out, so he got a no-hitter. I mean, that was a base hit. You can't take the base hit away. As we wrap up, happy birthday to Mike Boddicker, 67. Listen, Mike Boddicker is a good example of a guy who had a couple good years. Certainly doesn't belong in the Hall of Fame. Yeah, time to let you go. Thank you, Drew, for coming in. We'll see you guys Sunday. I was going to do I think we'll skip the schedule for this weekend. Let me just look at the schedule quick, see if there's anything we need to. I won't go through all the matchups. I'll just talk about some of the great matchups this weekend. Houston and Baltimore, really good matchup. Arizona and Boston. Texas and Cleveland. Texas is done. Chicago, no. Philadelphia and Kansas City, interesting matchup. Milwaukee, nope. Mets and San Diego, important series based on what we just talked about with the wild card. San Francisco and Seattle. Those are the big matchups. And for Danny, LA will be at Tampa Bay. And where's Toronto for Chris's benefit? Toronto has canceled the rest of the season. Just kidding. I don't care who they have, by the way. I don't care. Here's the thing. If this is backed by the Saudis, I don't care if Babe Ruth is reincarnated and playing. I won't watch it. I don't watch any live golf, and I never will. I don't care who's there. I just don't. Yeah, Jazz. I had that in my notes here today. I never got to it. Jazz is going to be activated and it is in the lineup, as Drew points out. Thanks for bringing that in, Drew. At the end, I appreciate it. And guys, I appreciate you joining me as always. We'll see you Sunday with the Stream of Consciousness. Great job today, guys. As always, Keith Engle from TGI Sports Talk. We are out. Oh, I agree, Scott, by the way. They shouldn't be. Neither should the live golfers. Keith Engle. See you Sunday morning. Bye-bye.
National Streaming Sports is brought to you in part by BetUs.com, designed for true fans. NFL odds, Week 1 and futures, college football odds, including Heisman Trophy favorites and playoff odds, NBA odds of division winners and playoffs, Major League Baseball playoff and World Series odds, the National Hockey League Conference playoffs and Stanley Cup odds, and boxing wagers. Betting opportunities include versus the spreads and outright winners, also during the game. Use our link on our website, nessp.info, the Bet Us Opportunities webpage, for a 125% bonus on your first 3 deposits. Must be 21 years old, and remember, bet responsibly. You're listening to Keith Engle, the host of TGI Sports Talk, on the National Streaming Sports Roku channel.